ants are among the most numerous, widespread and frequently exploited members of the undergrowth. These, in Australia, collect seeds and store them underground. Plants encourage them to do so by adding a tasty capsule to their seeds. That may seem odd, but these ants don't eat all the seeds they store. In fact, seeds are more likely to germinate below ground than above. But not everything on this forest floor is what it seems.
When it comes to putting your eggs in a suitable place, some insects persuade other insects to do the job for them. This little object looks like a seed, and certainly it's fallen from above, and that ant seems to think it's worth eating. But actually, it hasn't come from a plant. It's come from another insect. And this is it. It's rather difficult to see because it looks exactly like a dried leaf, but it's a stick insect. There's its head, antennae, and that's the tip of its abdomen. As an adult like this, it spends all its time up in the trees eating leaves. And when the time comes to lay, and this one is doing so, all she does is simply to flick away the egg and let it fall to the ground. But that's not quite as risky as you might think.
Wherever you are, you can be pretty sure that some ants will turn up looking for food. And that is exactly what the stick insect's eggs look like, a nutritious seed complete with that fatty capsule at the tip. So the ants start to haul them away. Although the ants certainly eat a great number of the seeds they store, stick insect eggs don't seem to be quite as tempting. At any rate, the ants, after all their labour, usually leave the stick insect eggs untouched. While the seasons pass, the eggs lie underground, hidden from birds and any other predators that might eat them. They may remain there, safe, for up to 3 years, but eventually they hatch. It's only at this early stage of its life that a stick insect actually runs. The youngsters positively scamper up into the tree branches. There they will take up their adult life of leisure, well camouflaged, stolidly chewing leaves. Giving your offspring a good start in life can take a lot of effort, so some insects have evolved highly complex strategies to induce other species to become nursemaids on their behalf. This Californian desert hardly seems to be the best place to find nursemaids, but blister beetles have an amazing way of discovering them. It starts simply enough with the female beetle. She has dug a hole and is now laying her eggs in it. That done, she abandons them. A few centimetres below the surface of the sand, conditions are good for eggs, not too cold, neither too hot, even in the heat of the day. 6 weeks later, they hatch. But these sands are very barren and scorching hot. Somehow the tiny larvae have got to find food, and they won't find it here. Their survival depends on teamwork. Together, as a closely coordinated group, they climb up a stem of withered grass. When they get to the top, there's nowhere else to go. They look dangerously exposed to the sun and to other predators, but there they stay in a tight, squirming mass. For those that can get there, the top of this stem has become a stage for a remarkable piece of deception. What these larvae want is a lift, a ride, and they want it so badly that sometimes they'll even try and get it from a human finger. But what they're really searching for is not a human finger. They're searching for another insect. Here it comes, a female digger bee, leaving a tunnel that she's just dug for her own young. She's off to gather pollen. She packs it into baskets on her back legs and takes it back to her burrow. It'll provide valuable food for her young when they eventually hatch. And here comes a male. He's on the lookout for a female. To him, the cluster not only looks like a female, it smells like a female, for the beetle larvae are producing a perfume, a pheromone, that is exactly like that emitted by a female bee. He alights in order to mate, and in seconds is covered by the larvae that swarm all over him. At first, he seems stunned by the shock of his sudden increase in weight. But then he's off again. Now his luck improves. This really is a female. And while he mates, his passengers jump ship. Now they're all on board a female bee. She, having mated, goes back to her nest to lay, taking the larvae with her. At last, the young beetle larvae have reached safety and food, the store of pollen that the female digger bee worked so hard to collect for her own young. So they hop off and tuck in. Not only do they consume the pollen, when that runs out, they will eat the young bee larvae too. Around the world, people are now devoting their lives to saving some of the most threatened sea creatures. As here in the Caribbean. Every year, on just a few islands, a remarkable event takes place. As the sun sets, giant reptiles begin to emerge. This magnificent creature preparing to lay her eggs is the largest of all turtles, a leatherback. They can grow up to 1/2 ton in weight, and they have an ancestry that goes back 100 million years to the age of the dinosaur. But in recent times, their numbers have fallen catastrophically. Here, however, in the Caribbean, there is hope. Leatherback turtles leave the sea in order to lay their eggs in the dry sand. But out of water, these huge creatures are easy targets for hunters. In a small fishing village in Trinidad, Len Peters has experienced this firsthand.
I grew up in a household where the presence of turtle meat was normal. The fridge was always full of it. Everybody harvested turtles, including my parents. It's only when I became exposed to things that were being published about leatherbacks who were on the verge of extinction and nobody cares, that piqued my interest.
Len took the leatherback's future into his own hands. He began patrolling the beach at night to protect the turtles. A brave thing to do.
We were met with tremendous resistance. People would pelt us at night. I have had persons insult me, I had person curse me, I had person physically try to wrestle me with a machete. So it was really a hostile time back then.
If Len was going to save these turtles, he needed to win over the whole community.
We had to find a way to get the villagers to benefit from the presence of these animals.
He began to encourage tourists to visit the beach and train some villagers to be their guides. To help secure the turtles' future, he took the message to the next generation.
Now what's the largest size a leatherback can grow to? Shani?
2,000 pounds.
And that's correct. Leatherbacks can grow to 2,000 pounds. Now that's a big turtle.
Len's hard work paid off, and now attitudes have changed.
Just want to touch base on some of the things we want to accomplish tonight. It took us a while to reach out to the villagers, but gradually we got them involved as well. We got some of the poachers who would be hunting the animals to be part of the conservation program.
As well as protecting the adult turtles, the team also collect any eggs that might be flooded at high tide.
If the eggs are laid too close to the sea, we relocate the eggs and rebury them.
Thanks to the efforts of this community, these turtles have had an extraordinary change in fortune. This is now thought to be one of the densest leatherback nesting beaches in the world.
When we started, at the height of the nesting season, the numbers will be 30, 40 turtles a night. Now it's over 500. So we have seen an increase from 40 turtles to 500 turtles a night in just around 20 years.
Precious new hatchlings are also given a helping hand. Any that emerge during the day are collected to be released safely back to the sea, away from hungry birds. This little leatherback will have to face 1,000 hazards before it returns as an adult to this beach where it hatched. And those dangers will be greatly increased because of damage that we have done to the oceans. Good luck, little leatherback. You might think that this orangutan is washing socks as some kind of circus trick for which she's been specially trained, but not so. She is doing this entirely on her own initiative. She's seen others doing it and she's copying. And that ability to imitate, as well as to use tools,
is something which started among monkeys but has been brought to a much greater level among the apes. And those two talents were ultimately to lead to the transformation of the world.
Camp Leakey in Borneo is home to a special group of orangs who have been rescued from captivity and returned to the wild. Because they've lived partly in our world as well as theirs, they can give us an insight into what we have in common. This old lady loves DIY. So does her son, who was born in the wild. Even her infant is interested. It's very striking when you sit as close to an orangutan as this to see how similar they are to human beings. We are both, of course, great apes. But look how human her hand is, the skill with which she picks things up, the way that she can grasp a tool like that, the way she uses her brain to imitate what she's seen others doing. But the most important thing we share is our big brain. It's that has produced so many of the talents and abilities that we have in common.
In this tree, there is one of the most extraordinary plant predators.
It's one animal that I don't need to sneak up on.
Boo! This extraordinary creature is half blind, half deaf, and this is just about as fast as it can move. That's what's going to happen to you if you live on nothing but leaves.
It's a sloth. It's not exactly an enthusiastic leaf eater. A couple of half-hearted chews and the leaves go straight down to its stomach. Leaves, however, are not easily digested. The sloth's technique is to give them time. Then, eventually, this mobile compost heap pulls itself together and starts on a long and dangerous journey. This is a very unusual sight. A sloth in a hurry. It wants to defecate, and the only place it's happy doing that, oddly enough, is down on the ground.
It only does it about once a week. But why does it come down to the ground to do it?
And why does it nearly always choose to do so in exactly the same place? Whatever the reason, it must be very important, for a sloth on the ground is almost helpless.
Any predator could attack it, and it doesn't have the speed to escape. Why it comes down in this way is a mystery. Nobody knows. Now he's finished, and back he goes up to the safety of the canopy.
Leaves are not very nutritious. The sloth's way of compensating for that is not to eat more, but to do less. Its claws hook over the branches so that the sloth can hang without any effort of its muscles, which have been reduced to thin ribbons. And to save energy, it spends most of its time hanging around half asleep in the treetops.
So, with very little muscle and a reaction time only a quarter as fast as ours, how does a sloth's day compare with our day?
In the time it takes me to write a few letters, the sloth just about manages to groom itself. While we have our lunch, the sloth nibbles a few leaves. And then, as we film the sequence for the series, it's time for another nap.
What bird has the most elaborate, the most complex, and the most beautiful song in the world? Well, I guess there are lots of contenders, but
This bird must be one of them. The superb lyrebird of South Australia. He clears a space in the forest to serve as his concert platform. To persuade females to come close and admire his plumes, he sings the most complex song he can manage, and he does that by copying the songs of all the other birds he hears around him, such as the kookaburra. It's a very convincing impersonation. Even the original is fooled. He can imitate the calls of at least 20 different species. He also, in his attempt to outsing his rivals, incorporates other sounds that he hears in the forest. That was a camera shutter. And again. And now a camera with a motor drive. And that's a car alarm. And now the sounds of foresters and their chainsaws working nearby.
Already, cities like Miami here are under threat. Scientists predict that by the end of the century, the sea level's going to have risen by 1 meter or even 2. Were that to happen, parts of this city would certainly be submerged.
Around the world, hundreds of millions of people live near the coast, and as sea levels rise, their lives will be seriously affected. It's now clear that our actions are having a significant impact on the world's oceans. During the 4 years it took to make this series, we've witnessed many of these changes firsthand. But we've also worked alongside men and women dedicating their lives to safeguarding the ocean's future.
The oceans provide us with oxygen, they regulate temperature, they provide us with food and energy supplies, and it's unthinkable to have a world without a healthy ocean.
I still think we have the capability to change the manner in which we're wasting the resources, in which we're poisoning our oceans, and we can look to a future with healthy oceans.
When I look forward, I believe that if what we are doing can be duplicated just a little bit, these animals will have a chance of surviving.
It comes down, I think, to us each taking responsibility for the personal choices in our everyday lives. That's all any of us can be expected to do. And it is those everyday choices that add up.
are at a unique stage in our history. Never before have we had such an awareness of what we are doing to the planet. And never before have we had the power to do something about that. Surely we have a responsibility to care for our blue planet. The future of humanity, and indeed all life on Earth, now depends on us.